I found the place quite by accident, though sometimes I wonder if it wasn't waiting for me all along. Soothed by the promise of snug shelter after driving for hours over a serrated mountain road, I was too weary to sense anything amiss. The night was creeping in, invading the sky with bruise-colored clouds that pressed against twisted pines. My headlights raked across a cracked sign that read, "Vacancy." Its letters shuddered in the dim light, and for a brief moment I thought they rearranged themselves into something else, perhaps a grim warning or my own imagination playing tricks. But the allure of rest proved stronger than any nervous tremor, so I turned off the road and followed the gravel lane until the looming shape of a decrepit hotel resolved through the rolling, ever-present fog. Stepping out of the car into the cold, wet air, I felt the mountain's silence weigh on me. Even the gentle crunch of my boots against the gravel appeared swallowed by the gloom. An antique lantern flickered on the sagging porch, and a single, moth-eaten curtain hung still as a corpse in the window. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I climbed the porch steps. Pain sprouted in the wood beneath my feet, squeaking and moaning as if it wanted to warn me. The brass door knocker, tarnished green, featured a grotesque face with sunken eyes and parted lips. When I lifted it, my heart hammered. The resounding thud on the door startled me far more than it should have. I didn't wait long before the door swung open. A stooped figure with watery eyes peered out under a dusty bowler cap. He said nothing, just beckoned me into the foyer. The smell of old leather, stale perfume, and rotted wood mingled in the air. The medley was thick enough to taste. At the reception desk, an ancient ledger lay open. No lights brightened the space, save for a few sconces flickering in the hallway. Outside, the wind picked up, shaking the tired shutters, sending them slapping against the walls. The man behind the desk cleared his throat. "Welcome," he said, voice as dry as parchment. "We have a room. May I have your name?" He slid the battered ledger across the desk. His hand trembled as though weighed down by centuries of dust. I scribbled my name on the line, my pen's ballpoint cutting through the faded page because I pressed too hard. Only then did I notice smudges of other signatures, as though a once robust list had been worn away by the ages. The clerk studied my writing, his sunken eyes glinting with faint curiosity or hunger, and then snapped the book shut. With slow, calculated movements, he pulled a key from behind the desk, its brass tag reading, "Room 9. "Shall I take your bag?" he asked, politely declining. I just wanted to find warmth and lie down, but the chill creeping up my spine wouldn't let me rest. The clerk nodded, seeming unsurprised. Behind him I glimpsed a corridor with tattered wallpaper and portraits whose subjects had been scratched out. The half-lit hallway made me uneasy, but I stepped forward, determined to get some rest. Maybe tomorrow, I told myself. The morning sun would burn away the creepy illusions conjured by exhaustion. The corridor stretched in ways I couldn't have guessed from the outside. My footfalls echoed eerily, as if I strolled through a cavern rather than the hallway of a hotel. The paper on the walls had once been a vibrant red, but now was a water-stained, peeling tapestry. Here and there, sagging frames sported portraits of people with strangely blank eyes. One particularly large painting depicted a woman in a high-collared dress, her mouth twisted into a smile that seemed to quiver if I looked too long. At room 9, I inserted the brass key into a lock that resisted with a complaining snap. Then the door yielded, swinging open on battered hinges. A stale breeze wafted out, brushing my face. The single lamp on the bedside table offered the faintest glow, revealing walls of a sickly greenish-brown. The bed, covered by a threadbare quilt, looked like a battered relic from another century. While any other day I might have turned around and left, that evening my body ached for rest. I shut the door behind me, slid the deadbolt across, and let my duffel bag slip to the floor. Only after I collapsed onto the bed did I notice the door had only one lock, no chain, no additional latch, nothing. The bolt felt flimsy beneath my fingertips, but my exhaustion overcame the anxiety simmering within me, so I curled up on the squeaking mattress and let the darkness carry me into a shallow, uneasy sleep. At some unknown hour, I woke, a dull ache in my neck. In the silence, a peculiar sound drifted through the walls, a scraping noise as if nails were clawing the floor somewhere close by. A distinct feeling of being watched gripped me. Holding my breath, I listened. The scraping sound came closer, then receded. My heart thudded. I strained my ears in the gloom, expecting perhaps footsteps to shuffle against the corridor, but there was only silence. Gnawing fear nearly pushed me to fling the door open and run for my car. Then I remembered the twisting paths outside, cloaked in fog and darkness that might hide far worse dangers. With trembling hands, I switched on the lamp. Dim light revealed the old wallpaper with cracked plaster showing through. Time felt like it had slowed, the hush beyond the door unrelenting. I decided to check the hallway if only to prove there was no immediate threat. I slid the bolt open cautiously, quietly, and peered into the corridor. Deserted. The flickering sconce made the shadows dance, cast swirling shapes over the peeling wallpaper. The air smelled of dust motes and something sweeter, like decayed flour. Unable to discern any sign of what made the scraping noise, I retreated back into my room, heart still pounding, and sat on the edge of the bed. My mind conjured nightmares, but I forced my eyes closed again, telling myself it was only an old building making old building sounds. When morning came, or what passed for morning in that dreary place, I awoke to find the room filled with a uniform gray light, as though the hotel willed the sun away. A persistent weight on my chest made breathing difficult. Determined to leave, I collected my things and made a beeline for the lobby. The hallway felt somehow longer than I remembered. I counted the doors as I went, noticing that some numbers were missing or heavily scratched. It was as though entire rooms had been listed, condemned, or erased from memory. Eventually, I reached the lobby. Behind the reception desk, I found no one. A thin sheen of dust covered the ledger and the mantel behind it, as though no one had disturbed the area for years. And yet, I could see faint footprints in the dust, partial outlines that vanished behind the desk. With cautious steps, I investigated, half expecting the hunched clerk to appear from a hidden doorway. But I was alone. A sense of dread filled me as I realized I hadn't heard any signs of other guests. No clatter of cutlery, no quiet conversations, not even the drone of a distant television. I tried the door. It was locked. No matter how hard I turned the knob, it wouldn't budge. I looked for a key, checking behind the desk, under papers along shelves, but there was nothing. Panicked, I went to the single window in the lobby which overlooked the porch. Fog pressed against the glass like a living entity. The porch rail was barely visible. My car stood in the mud-slick courtyard, a dark silhouette blurred by the swirling mists. Thinking perhaps I could get out through a back exit, I ventured deeper into the hotel, searching for the dining room or a service corridor. I found a wide doorway that opened into a lounge. Inside, chairs with torn upholstery faced a massive fireplace whose ashes looked cold and untouched. On the mantel, a grand mirror hung crookedly. Its surface was tarnished, giving my reflection a ghostly pallor. Worn books lay scattered on a side table, their spines cracked, pages yellowed. Oddly, none had titles. The words inside them had faded to the point of becoming unreadable. The door at the far end of the lounge was locked too, the handle rattling emptily under my hand. The uneasy sense of being herded like prey set my nerves fraying. I explored a twisting corridor that led to a back staircase. Ascending the steps, I came upon a landing where narrow windows revealed only swirling haze. My every footstep produced a mild groan from the wood. On the second floor, the wallpaper changed to a dark floral pattern, and the doors sported tarnished plaques with no numbers. One door was slightly ajar. Through the crack, I glimpsed a dim room lit by a single candle on a writing desk. When I pushed it open, the door squeaked on its hinges, revealing a slender woman standing by the window, her back to me. She wore an outdated traveling cloak, the kind one might see in photos from 50 or 60 years ago. Her hair fell in disheveled curls down her back. "Excuse me," I said softly, stepping into the room. "Are you staying here?" She turned slowly. Her eyes were wide, ringed with dark circles. She held a letter in her hand, trembling. The candlelight flickered on her face, lending a gaunt hollowness to her cheeks. "I made it to the hotel," she whispered. "But I can't leave. I've tried. The past never ends. The roads rearrange themselves." Something about her voice made me shiver, as if she spoke from a realm outside time. She claimed to have come here decades ago, though she looked no older than 30. "My car ran out of fuel. The clerk told me to wait until morning for a delivery. But the morning never came, or when it did, the road was blocked by a rock slide. Then there was more fog, more darkness. Days, nights, they blend together now." Her words seemed to echo in the gloom, as if the walls themselves recorded her sorrow. She handed me the letter. Its words nearly vanished with age. I glimpsed phrases like "desperate to leave" and "haunted corridors." A chill crawled up my spine. When I asked if there were more guests, she simply gestured to the corridor. "They are here, somewhere. Some roam the halls, others hide in their rooms, waiting for a dawn that never really arrives. But darkness, the darkness is the worst. That's when we hear the voices." Unnerved, I hurried back downstairs, determined to force one of the doors open or break a window. Yet I felt the building twisting around me, or maybe it was my own frantic confusion. Each corridor started to resemble the next. Each door refused to open. Where the lobby had been, I found a dimly lit hallway. I pushed onward, expecting to emerge into the lounge, or to see the wide front windows. But the labyrinth only stretched on. No matter which turns I took, I remained in a corridor of locked doors, silent sconces flickering intermittently. The gloom thickened as the day wore on, and I could not find the clerk, or even the lounge with its fireplace. At last, I stumbled into a dining room. Chairs stood on end atop the dusty tables, and a discolored tablecloth draped across the largest table in the center. A half-burned chandelier dangled overhead like a spider. The stench of old, rancid grease and mildew assaulted my nostrils. A single place setting lay askew on the far corner, as though someone had begun to dine and then fled unexpectedly. Hearing a rustle in the darkness beyond the tables, I held my breath, half expecting a staff member to appear, but something else moved there, tall and lean with angular limbs. Its pale face reflected the meager light from the corridor. It was impossible to make out its features, yet I sensed a bottomless hunger in the way it silently swayed. My heart thundered. Without a second thought, I backed away, staying as silent as I could. The figure's head jerked in my direction. I heard a slow scraping sound, reminiscent of nails dragging across the warped floor. I fled before I could see more, racing back into the corridor. When I finally found the lobby, my relief malformed into renewed horror. The reception area was now pitch dark, lit only by the feeble glow from a single overhead fixture. The front door was wide open, unveiling a swirling blackness behind the sagging porch. Wind hissed among the battered beams, a low, steady whisper. I rushed forward, intending to escape into the open air, but something stopped me at the threshold. A barrier I could not pass. My body felt pinned, as though by an unseen hand. A swirl of icy wind rushed from outside, forcing me back. The door slammed shut in my face with a resounding crack that shook the walls. Darkness descended with finality, as if the sun had retreated from the world entirely. Flickering lights revealed a tall figure behind the counter. It was the clerk, though his form flickered like a candle flame made of shadow and color. His eyes, watery before, now glowed with uncanny intensity. In one skeletal hand he gripped the ledger. "New arrivals must stay the night," he intoned. "All must stay until the pass is safe again." I stammered something in protest, my words lost in the crescendo of wind pounding against the building. "I want to leave," I managed. "I need to check out. Why am I trapped here? The clerk's lips curled into a parody of a smile, revealing cracked teeth. "The past is not possible at night," he said softly. "Stray from shelter, and a mist claims your soul. We offer refuge until dawn, but if you wander these halls, perhaps you'll never see daylight again." Before I could protest, he vanished behind the reception desk, leaving me alone in the half-dark. The gloom felt alive, pressing me from all sides. I fumbled along the corridors, seeking the staircase to the second floor, determined to find the woman I'd met earlier and see if we could escape together. Each step was perilous. The building thrummed with subtle vibrations, as though it had a heartbeat. The sconces offered meager light, bombarded by shifting shadows that threatened to coalesce into shapes at the corners of my vision. When I finally reached the door to her room, it was locked. No answer came to my urgent knocking. It felt as though the walls themselves were mocking me with their silence. I stumbled through the corridors, the hush periodically broken by faint murmurs, a snippet of laughter from a distant hall, the whisper of an unseen person calling my name, or the scrape of that dreadful creature's nails. My thoughts tumbled. Had I truly seen another guest? Or was I descending into madness wrought by the hotel's oppressive gloom? There seemed to be no logic to the layout now. Doors appeared where they hadn't before. A turn in the hallway led me back to the dining room, or some deserted lounge sporting furniture draped in yellowing sheets. I found a flickering lamp perched on a side table, and in its failing light I saw a battered sign. "The doors are always open." The irony made a bitter laugh escape my lips. Hours drifted by in an unsteady march. Eventually, I found a side corridor that smelled faintly of damp earth. It ended in a stout metal door with rusted bolts. I pried them loose, hopeful it might lead to a lower level or a cellar. Perhaps from there I could find another exit. It gave way with a groan, revealing a steep staircase leading downward. The air turned musty and thick, my breath echoing in the enclosed space. At the foot of the stairs, I entered what looked like an abandoned storage room. Old trunks and crates stood piled around. Thick cobwebs clung to overhead beams, and the single light bulb illuminated swirling dust motes. As I crept by the crates, I heard a faint drip of water somewhere. The shadows danced with each step, as if recoiling from my intrusion. A door in the far corner stood ajar. Beyond it lay a corridor lined with heavy, iron-bound doors. Some stood open, revealing cramped cells or storerooms. Others were locked tight, strange scratching and whimpering sounds issuing from within. Trembling, I realized this place was no ordinary hotel basement. It felt more akin to a dungeon. A sudden clank from one locked door made me leap back. I peered through the bars of a small window set at eye level. Inside, in the darkness, I thought I saw a shape lurch toward me, another lost soul, perhaps. But then a hiss, more animal than human, sent me staggering away. My mind reeled. Who were these prisoners behind iron doors? Why did they remain here? Driven by fear, I reached the end of the corridor. A heavy gate blocked my path, padlocked and chained. All hope of a hidden exit evaporated, replaced by the horrifying sense that I was in the lair of something monstrous. I turned back, passing the locked cells and returning to the storeroom, only to find that the door up the stairs was no longer open. In its place was a solid stretch of stone wall, as if the staircase had never existed. Panicked, I tapped the wall, rapped my knuckles against cold, unyielding rock. No seam indicated a hidden door. It was as if the hotel had shifted yet again. I let out a ragged sob, the echoes swallowed by the gloom. Despair settled in. I tried yelling for help, but the hotel devoured the sound. I wandered back to the row of cells, uncertain if forging onward would make any sense. Then the corridor went utterly dark. Breath stilled in my lungs. A new presence slithered through the blackness, something that reeked of damp decay and ancient dust. I heard the rasp of its breath. I felt the air shift against my face. Unable to see, I retreated, forcing myself against a stone wall. My heart hammered in my ears. Then, in a wrenching moment, The corridor lit again with a sickly glow, revealing itself empty. Shaking uncontrollably, I forced my feet to move. My only choice was to search for another way out. A single battered door, which I had somehow missed before, beckoned at the far end of the corridor. Its handle was cold to the touch. Beyond it lay not a continuation of the basement, but a staircase that rose into what appeared to be a servant's hallway. Relief pulsed through me. I climbed, ignoring how each step threatened to crumble underfoot. The hallway above had walls of stained plaster. At the end, I spied a faint glimmer, perhaps a window or an open door. Scrambling forward, I emerged into the lobby again, as if spat out by the hotel's shifting bowels. The front door stood before me, wide open. But the scene outside was no longer night nor day. It was a swirling kaleidoscope of gray fog, illuminated by an eerie half-light that recalled twilight or dawn. My car sat in the courtyard, still shrouded by drifting wisps. This time, I summoned the courage to cross the threshold. Energy crackled over my skin, but I pushed onward with a feral desperation. My feet met the porch, then I stumbled down the steps. The fog enveloped me, coiling around my ankles, as if reluctant to let me go. With trembling hands, I wrenched open the car door. When the engine turned over, relief almost brought tears to my eyes. I reversed, headlights reaching into that dense, murky veil. The battered sign reading "Vacancy" was undecipherable in the haze. I found the narrow gravel path. Despite the gloom, I forced the car forward, feeling the wheels slip on wet stones. Soon, I reached what should have been the fork in the mountain pass. However, the road seemed different. A narrow route twisting up the slope at an impossible angle. I crept forward, heart hammering, the fog so thick I could barely see beyond the hood. The path wound tightly, carved into steep rock faces. One slip and the car could tumble into an abyss. Yet I pressed on, determined to free myself from the hotel's clutches. Time lost meaning as I negotiated hairpin turns in near blindness. Suddenly, the headlights illuminated something on the side of the road, a battered sign shaped like an arrow. I nearly sobbed in gratitude, though the words on it were too faded to read. Following the arrow, I rounded a bend. The fog thinned momentarily, revealing a shape up ahead. My heart nearly stopped. There, perched precariously on a rocky outcrop, stood this same decaying hotel, its porch light flickering. The path had led me in a circle. Sick with dread, I stopped the car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I stared at the building as if it were a mirage. A sudden movement in my rearview mirror drew my attention. Through the swirling mist, I saw silhouettes approaching. One had the stooped posture of the old clerk. Another was the slender woman from the upstairs window. They were accompanied by others, too many for me to count. Their eyes glowed faintly, like predators. As they neared, I could almost sense the sorrow and despair emanating from them. Some walked as if uncertain of their own limbs. Others glided soundlessly, mere shades among the living. The engine sputtered. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, but the car wouldn't respond. Steam hissed from under the hood. Outside, the shapes advanced, unstoppable as the tide. I frantically tried to open the door and run, but the handle refused to budge. Panic soared. My gaze darted from the crooked front of the hotel to the battered sign that insisted vacancy. The travelers, the guests, trapped in a never-ending loop of shadowy roads and locked doors. Outside, I could see the silhouettes merging into the swirling mist, an ever-growing crowd of lost souls, their faces turned toward me in silent invitation or condemnation. Suddenly, the passenger door unlocked with a soft click, opening onto the deserted road. My breath caught in my throat. Were they offering me the chance to join them freely? Or was it some elaborate trick? A pushing wind whistled through the gap, carrying with it the same sweet, rotting scent from the corridors. Nervous, I slid over and climbed out, stumbling onto the gravel. My legs threatened to give out. Slowly the silhouettes parted, making way as I approached the hotel once more. My old prison, or my only sanctuary from the fog. Something in me realized that beyond this cursed place lay only endless night. Biting tears, I ascended the porch steps. The battered door drifted open, revealing the dimly lit foyer. The clerk stood behind the reception desk, ledger held open, pen at the ready. I had already signed in, I remembered, with a pang of despair. He nodded gravely as I entered, his watery gaze piercing. In the distance, I heard more footsteps echoing through the endless corridors, as though the walls were alive with wandering guests. I wanted to cry out, to beg him for release. Still, a part of me knew no words would matter. This same twisted logic that had enticed me in the first place betrayed me again. This was a trap built into the very bones of the mountain. The hotel, a lonely beacon for weary travelers, had quietly devoured countless souls. Darkness pressed against the windows, and the old clerk said, "Would you like to keep your same room?" I said nothing. My throat was parched, heart pounding so violently it hurt. In stiff resignation, I nodded, feeling the last shred of my hope melt away. He placed the tarnished room key into my trembling hand, his eyes betraying a bitter sympathy, or maybe a vacant satisfaction. As I turned toward the corridor, I could hear the wind moan a lament through the broken shutters. The gloom welcomed me, a silent host leading me toward the uncertain realms beyond the rooms. I entered. So went the anchor, down the remote steps, and beyond the rooms beyond. Perhaps the next morning's light, if it existed at all, would bring me another futile escape, but the creeping dread in my veins told me otherwise. And so I walked back to the same hallway that somehow never ended, to the same door that might or might not be mine, into a darkness where anything could lurk and no one ever truly left. Perhaps I would search those corridors forever, or perhaps the fog outside would claim me. As I turned the key in the lock, I knew one truth. Something intangible had taken hold of me, something that would keep me trapped until my spirit merged with the shadows. The door hissed open. In a final, feeble protest, I whispered to the empty hall, "I just want to go home." Only silence answered. The door creaked closed behind me, sealing me inside. In the flickering lamplight, I thought I heard a distant voice calling my name, but I couldn't tell if it was my own echo or another lost traveler, forever wandering. My hand dropped to my side. The key fell from my grasp, landing on the threadbare rug. The faintest sound reverberated, like a bell tolling a quiet sentence. And with that, a vast, lonely hush enfolded the walls of the hotel. Another night, another captive, another story of a traveler who never checks out.